For thousands of years, the galaxy had lived in a strange balance between peace and fear. Across hundreds of worlds, one simple rule was known by every species that ever met a human: never harm their children. It was not written in any official treaty, not signed by any council, and not enforced by any fleet, but everyone knew it. The first rule of the galaxy was clear and absolute: do not harm human children. Long ago, before the Great Age of Unity, a small human child had been caught in the middle of a war between alien empires. That war should have been like any other. But when the humans found out that one of their young had died, everything changed. Entire fleets vanished within days. Planets that had taken centuries to build became dust clouds in the dark. The humans called it the retaliation, but the rest of the galaxy remembered it as the awakening. They realized then that humans did not just defend themselves, they defended the very idea of innocence. The price of touching that innocence was destruction beyond imagination. Generations passed and most species learned to live carefully. Humans became part of the Galactic Council after many long centuries. They built colonies, helped others rebuild after wars, and turned their anger into progress. They taught medicine to the Kroth, trade to the Vathari, and agriculture to the Siran. Humanity was no longer feared for its fury, but respected for its compassion. They protected the weak and always offered help to those who needed it most. The stories of their old wrath became myths told to frighten young soldiers. People began to think that the first rule was only an old legend. But legends have roots in truth, and sometimes the universe forgets why those roots exist. On a bright silver world called Zinara, orbiting a twin star system, humans had built a small colony. It was peaceful, home to both human settlers and alien partners. The colony had schools, gardens, and research domes for young minds from many species. It was a symbol of unity, a place where children of every kind could learn side by side. In one of those domes, 12 human children attended class alongside others from the stars. They studied, played, and dreamed together. Far above the planet, the Galactic Council debated about trade routes, taxes, and military protection. Among the many arguments, there was a small border dispute between a human company and a corporate group under council protection. To the council, it was just politics. To the humans, it was a matter of fairness. The argument dragged for months and tempers grew. Then one day, a careless decision changed everything. A council military drone was sent to remove what they believed was an illegal weapons cache hidden within a dome on Zinara. The order was rushed, signed by an assistant officer who barely read the details. No one checked the coordinates twice. The drone descended quietly through the planet's thin clouds and locked onto its target. Inside the dome, the children were listening to a lesson about ancient Earth, about oceans and forests. They laughed when their teacher showed them pictures of whales and birds. Then the dome lit up with a blinding flash. The explosion was quick, silent, and merciless. The dome vanished. Within seconds, everything inside was gone. 12 human children, 3 alien tutors, and 2 guards. The news reached the colony within minutes. Then it reached the human embassy. Then Earth. The Galactic Council called it an accident. They said it was an error in the drone's targeting software. They promised compensation, apologies, and memorials. They thought it would be enough. After all, mistakes happened in the vastness of space. Surely humanity had grown beyond vengeance. Surely the old rule was only a story. But the galaxy waited for a response. Every race remembered the ancient warnings whispered through generations. They watched Earth and its colonies for signs of movement, for messages, for any sign of anger. But nothing came. No human ships moved. No ambassadors spoke. No demands were made. The humans were silent. At first, the silence felt like calm. Then it began to feel like a storm holding its breath. The council chambers buzzed with nervous talk. Some believed the humans were grieving privately. Others thought they were planning revenge. Admiral Kirill of the Vathari Collective tried to calm his people. Humans are reasonable, he said. They will seek justice, not blood. But deep down, even he felt uneasy. There was something unnatural about Earth's quiet. The council sent investigators to Zinara, escorted by guards. They examined the ruins, collected fragments, and promised to share their findings with humanity. The humans thanked them politely but did not send anyone in return. The colonies near Zinara went dark. Communication lines that were once open to all species began to close. Even trade routes that had run smoothly for decades started to show signs of withdrawal. Human ships stopped responding to council channels. Cargo freighters changed routes without explanation. The silence was spreading like a shadow across the stars. On the surface of Earth, under its bright blue sky, life appeared normal. People went to work, children went to school, and the news screen spoke of peace. But under the surface, in hidden halls beneath the lunar base, the real heart of humanity began to beat faster. Leaders, admirals, and scientists gathered in secret meetings. No one shouted. No one blamed. They simply listened to the recordings from Zinara, the screams cut short, the teacher's last words, and the static that followed. No words could describe what they felt, only a quiet unity of purpose. Humanity had been patient for centuries. They had taught peace to a galaxy that once feared them, but peace had always rested upon one rule, the oldest of them all. Now that rule was broken, and the galaxy had to remember what it had tried to forget. Far away, the Galactic Council continued to send messages asking for calm discussions. Their ambassadors spoke of diplomacy, forgiveness, and understanding. They believed that the humans would eventually accept their apology and return to the table. Yet in every corner of the galaxy, old soldiers and historians felt the air grow colder. They had read the old archives, the ones the Council tried to hide. They knew what followed the silence of Earth. It was not rage or war. It was precision. It was vengeance wrapped in reason. It was the kind of justice that left no enemy standing, but rebuilt what was destroyed afterward. In the quiet of the night, in one of the deep control rooms beneath the lunar surface, a human commander looked at a star map. 12 bright points of light marked the home systems of the Council species that had approved the drone strike. He spoke softly to the others in the room. "We will not strike them as they struck our children," he said. "We will teach them why the first rule exists, and when they understand, we will forgive, but not before they remember." Outside, Earth rotated slowly, beautiful and calm. To the galaxy, it was still silent. But that silence had a heartbeat now, slow and deliberate. The humans were waiting, not for orders, not for revenge, but for the moment when the stars themselves would realize what they had done. The first rule of the galaxy had been broken, and everyone everywhere knew that something was coming. For several weeks after the tragedy on Zinara, the galaxy lived in uneasy quiet. The Galactic Council tried to continue its work as if nothing had changed. Reports were written, meetings were held, and official statements were repeated over and over. They called the drone strike a technical error and promised that the Council's engineers were already fixing the problem. But deep inside, every species that sat in those great halls could feel something was wrong. The humans had not answered. Not a single representative had attended any council meeting since the incident. The human seat in the shining central chamber remained empty. At first, other races thought it was a form of mourning. They gave the humans time and space, believing they would return soon. But the longer the silence continued, the heavier the air grew. Even the most confident ambassadors began to lower their voices when they spoke of Earth. The Council's leader, Chancellor Varn, finally called an emergency meeting. Her tone was calm but carried hidden worry. "The human government has not replied to our last 12 transmissions," she said. "Their trade convoys have stopped all routes to our systems. Their colonies have gone dark. This is not a delay of grief, it is isolation. We cannot allow this silence to grow." Admiral Kirill, one of the few who truly respected humanity, spoke carefully. "Perhaps we should send envoys, Chancellor. Quietly. No soldiers, no weapons, just diplomats with gifts of peace. It would show we care." But another member, a proud and impatient official from the Dreth Dominion, shook his head. "Humans are emotional," he said. "They believe their young are holy. They are only waiting for our fear. If we show weakness, they will take advantage. The best way to deal with them is to remain firm." The council chamber fell silent for a moment. The debate between fear and reason was as old as the stars. In the end, the Chancellor agreed to both plans. Diplomatic envoys would be sent to Earth while the Council's fleets would remain on alert, just in case. Far away on Earth, those envoys never arrived. Every ship that tried to approach the solar system vanished from sensors. Some were quietly turned back by powerful signal interference. Others disappeared completely. No distress call, no wreckage, just gone. It was as if the humans had folded their space and shut the doors of their home. Rumors began to spread through the galaxy. Some said the humans were preparing a weapon so powerful that even stars would bow before it. Others said they were leaving the galaxy forever, turning their back on all others. Some even whispered that the humans had awakened ancient machines buried beneath their moon. Nobody knew the truth, but everyone agreed on one thing. The silence was terrifying. Out on the edge of human territory, at a station called Vesta 9, a small group of alien traders waited for weeks. They had been friendly with humans for decades and could not believe that humanity had truly turned cold. One night, as they watched the empty sky, they saw something strange. A fleet of human ships appeared out of nowhere, dozens of them dark and silent, their hulls black as the void. They didn't transmit signals, didn't respond to greetings, didn't even show engine light. They just passed by like shadows moving through the stars. The traders never saw them again, but they sent a message across the networks. The humans are moving. The Galactic Council received that message with fear. They held another meeting, this time filled with arguments. Some wanted to prepare for war. Others demanded peace. "We must talk to them," shouted one ambassador. "They are planning something. We need to stop it before it's too late," cried another. Admiral Kirill stood again, his voice steady but heavy with memory. "Do you not understand?" he asked quietly. "You cannot stop what you cannot see. The humans do not rush to war. They plan, they watch, and when they move, it is already too late to stop them." The Chancellor turned toward him. "Then what do you suggest, Admiral? Wait for them to strike?" Kirill sighed. "No. I suggest we remember the first rule before they remind us." But it was already too late for remembering. Across the galaxy, strange things began to happen. Automated defense grids started shutting down on their own. Long-range sensors that once tracked trade routes began to display impossible readings. Communication satellites played loops of old human songs before going silent. No ships were attacked, no shots fired, but the Council's systems were falling apart from the inside. Engineers tried to fix the errors but couldn't find the cause. Some believed it was a virus, others suspected sabotage. In truth, it was neither. It was the humans. They had entered the Council's networks through old communication links, ones that the Council had forgotten existed. Now they controlled almost every machine the Council owned, and no one even realized it yet. Back on Earth's moon, deep under the gray surface, the Human Council gathered again. The chamber was circular, filled with light and calm voices. There was no anger, no shouting, only focus. At the center of the room, a holographic map of the galaxy spun slowly. Red lights marked the positions of every Council military base. The human leader, a woman named Admiral Serena Holt, stood before it with her hands behind her back. She looked at the glowing lights and spoke softly. "They broke the first rule, 12 children, 12 lights that will never shine again, and now they think an apology can erase it." A young officer beside her hesitated. "Do we strike, Admiral?" Holt shook her head. "Not yet. The Council must understand what it means to break a rule of peace. We will not destroy them. We will show them their weakness." Her words spread like a silent order across human space. Fleets prepared not for attack but for control. Special teams of scientists and engineers worked on something called Project Mirror, a system that could expose every secret the Council had ever tried to hide. Humanity would not respond with violence this time. They would respond with truth. In the following days, the silence grew deeper. Council worlds that once saw human traders every week now felt emptiness. Human outposts closed their ports. Markets that depended on Earth's technology began to fail. Even starships that used human-made reactors started shutting down, their systems locked by unknown codes. The galaxy began to feel what humanity's absence truly meant. Without human engineers, half the Council's ships could not maintain their drives. Without human traders, food shipments slowed. Without human medics, diseases once cured began to return. The proud Council, who once believed they ruled the galaxy, was discovering how much it depended on the very species it had offended. In their confusion, they turned once again to diplomacy. Chancellor Varn made a desperate announcement, broadcasting across every known frequency. "To the people of Earth," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "we regret the tragedy of Zanara. We seek understanding, not conflict. The Galactic Council asks for your presence. Please speak to us." The message reached no one. Far beyond her reach on the hidden stations near Jupiter and Titan, humans watched the transmission in silence. They did not laugh or mock. They simply turned it off. To them, words meant nothing now. Only actions mattered. On the outer edge of human territory, a massive ship came out of warp. Its name was the Resolute, a vessel of peace repurposed for purpose unknown. It carried no weapons, only data. Within its dark hull was the beginning of Project Mirror, a network that would soon make every lie in the galaxy visible. As the ship prepared to jump again, one of the officers looked at the Admiral. "Do you think they'll understand when it's done?" he asked. The Admiral stared out into the endless stars. "They will," she said quietly. "Because when we are finished, they'll see the truth, not of us, but of themselves. And then they'll finally remember why the first rule was written." The stars around the Resolute shimmered as it entered warp space, leaving behind nothing but silence once again. The galaxy waited, afraid to breathe. The humans were coming, but not in the way anyone expected. They would not attack with fire and death. They would attack with knowledge, precision, and the kind of justice that burns slower than war but cuts deeper than any weapon ever could. The silence continued, but now it had a rhythm, a pattern that echoed through the stars, a message that every world could feel even without words. The message was simple. The humans were awake. The galaxy had not heard a human voice for almost 2 months. In every council world, people whispered about Earth in fear and wonder. Some thought humanity had forgiven them. Others thought humanity was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Either way, the silence had become unbearable. On the Council's capital world, Loria Prime, security was at its highest level. Fleets circled the planet day and night. Scanners swept the skies, and every ship entering orbit was checked 100 times. Still, the fear would not leave. The Council had broken the first rule of the galaxy, and everyone knew that punishment would come, but from where no one could guess. Chancellor Varn tried to remain calm. In the Great Council chamber, she addressed the gathered representatives. "We have received no threats," she said. "No warnings. The humans have not made a single move against us. I believe they are choosing peace. If we reach out once more with honesty, they might." The lights in the chamber flickered. Every screen went black for a moment, and then a white symbol appeared, a single handprint glowing softly. Beneath it, 2 words formed in human language: "We remember." Gasps filled the hall. Technicians scrambled to shut down the signal, but they couldn't. The same symbol appeared on every device, every data screen, and every broadcast channel across the galaxy. It didn't cause harm. It didn't demand anything. It only reminded everyone that the humans were watching. The signal vanished after 1 minute. Silence followed again, but it was heavier this time. The Council had no idea how humanity had entered their secure systems, but they all knew what the message meant. The humans hadn't forgotten. They never did. Far away, deep in human space, the ship the Resolute moved silently through the void. It carried the heart of Project Mirror, the weapon of truth that Admiral Serena Holt had designed. The ship had no cannons, no missiles, no soldiers. It was a machine of exposure. It could break through any security network and reveal every secret hidden behind walls of lies. Inside the command room, Holt stood before her officers. "The Council lives by deception," she said. "They hide their crimes behind rules and paperwork. We will show their people the truth they never see. They will understand what was done to our children." A soft voice answered from behind her. It was Lieutenant Aisha, one of the youngest officers aboard. "Admiral," she asked, "will we destroy them?" Holt looked at her calmly. "No, Lieutenant. We do not destroy what we can change. But they must see who they have become. Only then will they learn why we made the first rule." The ship's engines roared to life as the Resolute jumped into warp space, heading straight toward the heart of the Council's communication grid. Meanwhile, back on Loria Prime, Admiral Kirill sat in his quarters, staring out the window at the stars. He had once fought beside human captains during the border wars. He knew their minds, patient, sharp, and disciplined. He knew this silence was not weakness but control. He whispered to himself, "They are not attacking yet because they don't need to." A message arrived on his personal console. It was encrypted using an old human code that only veterans from the war would recognize. His breath caught as he opened it. The message was short and simple. "Do not fear, old friend. We are not your enemy, but the Council must face what it has done. Stand aside and your people will be spared. Saitsi, Serena Holt." Kirill felt a chill run down his spine. He understood now. Humanity's wrath would not come as fire or invasion. It would come as truth, and nothing in the galaxy could defend against it. That night, Project Mirror was unleashed across every council world, every data stream, every broadcast tower. Human code flowed like a living storm, but instead of destroying, It revealed. Billions of citizens watched as secret files appeared on their screens, evidence of corruption, hidden wars, silenced colonies, and the truth about Zinara. The files showed the meeting where council members had approved the drone strike. They heard their leaders laugh and call it a small mistake. They saw how they had buried the evidence and blamed the human colonists for provoking the attack. The galaxy erupted. On hundreds of worlds, protests filled the streets. People who once trusted the council now shouted for answers. Soldiers began to question their orders. The mighty organization that had ruled for thousands of years was crumbling under the weight of its own lies, and every broadcast ended with the same quiet message. You broke the first rule. Chancellor Varn watched in horror as her world turned against her. Who gave them this power? She shouted at her advisors. How can they reach every system? But no one had answers. Even the council's strongest AIs were silent now, replaced by human counter-programs that prevented them from lying. In one of the outer colonies, a small alien family sat together watching the broadcasts. Their youngest child asked, "Mother, why are the humans doing this?" The mother, her eyes full of tears, replied, "Because we forgot to protect the children." Meanwhile, in the dark space between stars, Admiral Holt received the reports one by one. No human ships had fired a single weapon. No lives were lost. Yet the council was falling faster than any fleet could have made it fall. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Justice is served." But even as humanity watched the collapse from afar, there were still those who wanted revenge. Some human generals argued that exposure was not enough. "They killed our children," one of them said bitterly. "Let them feel lost too." Admiral Holt faced them firmly. "If we become like them, then the first rule means nothing. We will win with truth, not blood." The generals fell silent. They knew she was right. Humanity's greatest strength had never been destruction. It had been restraint. Over the next few weeks, chaos spread through the galaxy. The council tried to restore order, but every attempt failed. Their fleets refused to follow corrupt leaders. Entire systems declared independence. For the first time in 1,000 years, the council was powerless. Admiral Kirill, the Vathari leader who had once defended the humans, called for peace. He sent a transmission on the last working channel that reached Earth. "Humans," he said, "the galaxy has seen your truth. The guilty have been revealed. What happens now? Do we rebuild or do we fall apart?" To his surprise, this time there was an answer. A voice calm and clear filled the channel. It was Serena Holt herself. "Admiral Kirill," she said, "the council will end but not the galaxy. You and those who remember the old rule will help us build something better. The age of lies is over." The transmission ended, but hope began to rise. Even among the ruins of the council, a new alliance was forming. One built not on fear, but on shared truth. Still, some planets remained silent. Some leaders, too proud to admit guilt, began to gather their fleets. They believed they could fight back. They believed humanity could still be stopped. But as they prepared for war, they discovered something strange. Their ships refused to launch. Their weapon systems were locked. And on every command screen, one final message appeared from the humans. "We told you. We would not destroy you. We only removed your power to harm others again." And just like that, the weapons of war became useless. The fleets went dark. The galaxy had never seen a war like this before. A war without explosions. A war fought with truth instead of fire. Humanity had not only defended its honor, it had changed the balance of power in the universe. The council's fall was complete. And the galaxy, for the first time in centuries, stood on the edge of something new. The humans had not conquered. They had reminded everyone what it meant to protect life, to defend innocence, and to uphold the first rule. And far away on Earth, as the sun rose over the oceans, Admiral Serena Holt looked to the horizon and whispered, "The children can rest now." The Galactic Council had crumbled faster than anyone could imagine. The fleets that had once surrounded council worlds lay scattered and useless, their weapons frozen by human control. Systems that had relied on council administration were in chaos. For the first time, many species realized how much of their lives had been dictated by a body that had lied for centuries. The humans had shown them the truth without firing a single shot, and it was terrifying. Yet humanity did not gloat. They did not celebrate. On Earth, Admiral Serena Holt convened her council once again. The projection room on the moon glowed softly. showing the galaxy with all its broken systems. Red lights marked former Council strongholds, now silent and powerless. Blue dots indicated human fleets ready to respond yet restrained. Holt's eyes swept over the map, steady and calm. "Our work is not yet complete," she said quietly. "The Council has fallen, but the galaxy remains. We will not dominate. We will guide. Every species deserves to rebuild without fear. But first, the guilty must face their actions." Lieutenant Isha, standing beside her, nodded. "The humans have proven they can protect themselves, Admiral. But will the other species accept our guidance?" Holt turned to her. "They have no choice. We will offer cooperation, not control. The galaxy must see that the first rule protects everyone, not just us. It is time to restore balance." Human fleets moved with precision, not for conquest but for supervision. They entered former Council territories, establishing communication nodes and restoring stability. Systems that had been abandoned for months now saw human engineers working alongside local authorities. Repairs began on energy grids, trade routes reopened, and water and food supplies were carefully distributed. Wherever humans went, they brought order without oppression, showing that power could be wielded with restraint. On Loria Prime, Chancellor Varn struggled to maintain her authority. Once the most powerful leader in the galaxy, she now faced rebellion from her own citizens. Streets were filled with protests, and her military commanders openly questioned her orders. In desperation, she sent a message to Earth begging for forgiveness and assistance. The humans received it with quiet dignity, sending teams to oversee the transition. No conditions were demanded, no punishments imposed. They only required honesty and cooperation. Admiral Kirill watched from a Council outpost as human ships entered orbit. He remembered fighting alongside them decades ago, and he could see that nothing had changed in their resolve. The humans acted with clarity, patience, and intelligence. He realized that the galaxy's old fear of humanity had been correct. They were special, not because of the power they held, but because of the wisdom with which they used it. Project Mirror continued its work across former Council systems. Files were made public exposing corruption, cover-ups, and illegal operations. Citizens of dozens of species learned for the first time how their leaders had lied, how they had ignored the innocent, and how they had hidden truth behind bureaucracy. There was anger, certainly, but also a profound sense of relief. The galaxy had been freed from a government built on lies. In one colony, a young alien teacher looked at her students and said, "The humans have reminded us what it means to care for life, all life, not just those we favor. This is a lesson we cannot forget." Meanwhile, the human fleets maintained strict discipline. Ships patrolled trade routes, monitored energy grids, and ensured that no remnants of the Council could rebuild secretly. Yet they avoided conflict at every turn. When a former Council warship attempted to fire on a human convoy, it was immediately disabled with precision measures that left no crew harmed. The message was clear. Humanity could destroy, but it chose not to. On the Moon, Holt met with representatives from dozens of species who had once relied on the Council. They came with questions, some with skepticism, others with gratitude. Holt spoke plainly. "We are not your rulers. We are your partners. The first rule exists not because humans are invincible, but because children, the innocent, deserve protection. Every species has that right." A Kroth delegate, tall and armored, stepped forward. "You could have destroyed the Council completely. Why did you not?" Holt's eyes met his. "Because destruction is easy. Teaching restraint, showing mercy, and rebuilding trust, that is far harder. We chose the harder path. Across the galaxy, the changes were slow but visible. Former Council officials were stripped of power, but they were not punished personally. Instead, they were made to assist in the transition, ensuring that systems once hidden in corruption now operated transparently. Former soldiers became peacekeepers, engineers became trainers, and politicians became administrators of truth. The human presence was firm but gentle, guiding without forcing. Even the systems that had once feared humans began to see the benefit. Trade resumed smoothly. Medical supplies reached colonies that had waited months, and education programs restarted. Humanity had proven that strength without cruelty could reshape the galaxy. Holt observed the stars from her command room, reflecting on what had been accomplished. 12 children had died on Zinara, a tragedy that should never have happened, but their deaths had reminded the galaxy of a simple truth. Innocence must be protected at all costs. and the humans had done more than avenge them. They had ensured that such a crime could never happen again. Still, Holt knew the work was not over. There were those who would resist, who would cling to old power, who would try to rebuild the council in secret. Humanity had to remain vigilant, not as conquerors, but as guardians. She looked at her officers and spoke quietly. Our task is to restore balance, not for ourselves, but for every species that calls the stars home. We will teach the first rule not through fear, but through example. Lieutenant Isha nodded. And if they refuse to learn? Holt smiled gently. Then we show them the consequences of breaking it. But we do not strike first. We guide first. That is what makes us human. Weeks turned into months. Former council worlds began to thrive under human oversight. Communication channels were open, trade and travel normalized, and the fear that had spread through the galaxy slowly turned into respect. The humans' restraint inspired other species to reconsider their own actions, to rebuild with fairness and to place value on life, not just power. On Earth, the news screens did not broadcast triumph or victory. Instead, they told stories of recovery, of unity, and of lessons learned. Children of every species began to learn the history of Zinara, not as a tale of anger, but as a warning of what happens when innocence is violated. And the adults taught them the importance of empathy, patience, and cooperation. Even as the galaxy began to heal, the human fleets remained ready. Not for war, but to protect what had been rebuilt. Every ship, every crew member knew the importance of vigilance. They understood that the first rule was not just about humans, it was about every child, every innocent life in every corner of the stars. And in the quiet moments, Holt would sometimes stand at the edge of the moon, looking at the distant stars and thinking of Zinara. 12 bright lights had been extinguished too soon, but they had reminded humanity why they must always act with care. Holt whispered to herself, "We will never let this happen again. Not anywhere. Not ever." The galaxy, for the first time in centuries, felt safe, not because war had ended, but because wisdom had prevailed. The humans had proven that true power was measured not by how many worlds you could destroy, but by how many lives you could protect. The first rule had been broken, but humanity had restored it. And every species, whether they realized it or not, had learned a lesson that would endure for generations. The galaxy was changing. Former council worlds, once bound by fear and lies, now moved toward cooperation and transparency. Human fleets patrolled quietly, not to dominate but to ensure fairness. Trade routes that had been disrupted were restored, and colonies that had suffered from neglect began to flourish. Humanity did not impose itself. It guided, taught, and helped. For the first time, many species saw what it meant to live without the shadow of oppression. Admiral Serena Holt stood aboard the Resolute, looking at the stars. She thought of Zinara, of the 12 children who had died, and of the countless others who had suffered under corruption and negligence. Their deaths had awakened the galaxy to its responsibilities. Holt understood that the first rule was not just a human law, it was a universal truth. The innocence of children must be protected, no matter the species. A message arrived from a Kroth colony. Their leader, a tall warrior named Vashak, had been skeptical of humanity at first. He had doubted their restraint, questioned their motives, and even feared their power. But the message was filled with gratitude. "You have shown us what true protection means," it read. "Our systems are rebuilding. Our children are safe. Our people can trust again. Thank you, humans." Holt allowed herself a small smile. This was the reward she had sought. Not fear, not power, but trust and respect. Across the galaxy, former council members were learning the same lesson. They had been stripped of their authority, but they were not punished with violence. Instead, they were made to participate in rebuilding, repairing what their lies had broken. Every action they took was monitored for fairness, every decision recorded and shared publicly. The humans had turned judgment into education, showing that accountability was stronger than fear. In one of the largest former council cities, the streets filled with citizens eager to see the changes. Children ran freely, laughing as humans and aliens worked side by side to restore their homes. Markets reopened, schools were rebuilt, and hospitals that had been neglected were repaired. Citizens marveled at the calm and deliberate way the humans conducted themselves. They had power, yes, but they wielded it with patience, not anger. Even those who had once opposed humanity began to see the benefits. Some of the most resistant planets, led by stubborn officials, found themselves asking for help. Human engineers repaired their power grids. Human medics taught their doctors. Human diplomats advised their governments. No one was forced, no one threatened. The humans' restraint became a demonstration of strength far more powerful than weapons ever could be. On Earth, the media told stories not of war, but of cooperation. Children across the galaxy learned about Zanara, not as a tale of hatred, but as a warning. They studied the mistakes of the Council and the consequences of violating innocence. In classrooms, teachers explained that power without care is dangerous, and that the responsibility to protect the young is the foundation of any society. Admiral Holt visited many of these worlds in person, always accompanied by small teams of diplomats, engineers, and teachers. She met species who had never before seen humans. She listened to their stories, their fears, and their hopes. She answered every question patiently, showing that humanity's greatest strength was its ability to listen and act with thoughtfulness. The galaxy, once fractured, began to form a new alliance, not the old council which had ruled with secrecy and manipulation, but a coalition of species willing to learn and cooperate. The humans did not dominate this alliance. They guided it. Their fleets acted as protectors, not enforcers. Their scientists taught. Their diplomats advised. And everywhere the first rule was respected and enforced. Some former council members tried to resist, secretly gathering small fleets or hoarding weapons. Each time they were quietly intercepted. No lives were lost. No planets were harmed. The humans' presence was a reminder of what happened when innocence was violated, but also a promise that restoration was always possible. Admiral Holt watched from the command deck as one of these fleets surrendered without a fight. Their leaders had finally understood that humanity's strength lay not in destruction, but in justice tempered with mercy. Holt addressed her officers. "This is the galaxy we protect," she said. "Not through fear, but through respect. This is what the first rule looks like in practice." Lieutenant Isha, standing beside her, nodded. "We've shown them that restraint is stronger than power," Holt smiled. "And that is what makes us human. Never forget, Lieutenant, that protecting the innocent is the greatest responsibility we carry." As months turned into years, the galaxy stabilized. Former council worlds now had open governments, trade networks flourished, and the lessons of Zanara were taught to every generation. Children of all species grew up knowing the importance of protection, honesty, and cooperation. The humans had ensured that no ruler could ever again hide behind lies or power, and that no child would ever again be left unprotected by the law of the galaxy. Holt visited Zanara again, this time not as an admiral, but as a guardian of history. She walked through the rebuilt colony, noting the new schools, parks, and research centers. The memory of the 12 children who had died was honored with a simple monument. Names etched in white stone, surrounded by gardens and fountains, served as a reminder of why the first rule existed. Locals, both human and alien, came to pay respects, teaching their children the story of vigilance, empathy, and justice. Even the council officials who remained in the galaxy now accepted their role in the new order. They worked with humans to maintain fairness, transparency, and education. Some admitted their mistakes openly, apologizing to the citizens they had wronged. Others quietly learned from the humans, observing how patience and respect could achieve what violence never could. In the end, the first rule was no longer a legend whispered in fear. It was a universal law known to all species. Children everywhere, not just human ones, were protected. Leaders everywhere understood that the consequences of violating innocence were not just punishment, but correction, restoration, and accountability. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy, but it had transformed it. Back on Earth, Holt looked up at the night sky. She thought of the stars, each one holding countless worlds, each one filled with lives now safe from unnecessary harm. She knew the galaxy was not perfect. Challenges would always come. But for the first time, humanity had shown that true strength was measured not in destruction, but in protection, patience, and wisdom. She turned to her officers and said, "We have done what was necessary. The galaxy remembers the first rule. Let us never forget why it exists." And as the stars shone above, the humans of the galaxy continued their work, not as rulers, but as guardians. They ensured that no child would ever again be left unprotected, that no species would be misled by lies, and that the lessons of Zanara would last for generations. The first rule had been broken once. Humanity had restored it, and now it would endure forever. The galaxy, for the first time in its long history, felt truly safe. Not because of fear, not because of weapons, but because of humans. They had reminded every species what it meant to protect life, to uphold justice, and to respect the innocent. They had proven that true power was measured not by domination, but by restraint and wisdom. And the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter, as if acknowledging that the galaxy had finally learned its most important lesson, that protecting the children, human or otherwise, is the greatest duty of all.